and this is a Tech Hangout for OpenSpending. I'll be hosting it. We're going to be talking about the next development for OpenSpending. There's an agenda I'm going to share in the chat here. There's a rough agenda here. Maybe we'll follow it, maybe we won't. Depends on the input from everyone. We've got some initial things to follow, some kind of slides that I'll use to talk against, and Rufus will also give some history at the start. And then we'll just open it up for a general discussion and see how it goes from there. Okay. Does everyone, I see there's like, there's maybe 10 of us here. Does everyone want to say a quick hello and a bit about just hi and what's your relationship to budgetary data? Just like we can go around everyone in a few minutes. Maybe we'll start with Fabrizio.
Yeah. Hello, I'm Fabrizio. I work at Fraunhofer and the University of Bonn in Germany. I'll be working with the Open Budget project
Great.
For the next few years. Yeah.
Awesome.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, good to have you here. Thanks.
Yeah.
Friedrich?
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you. Yeah.
Oh God, my computer just collapsed and I'm now on a Linux machine. Anyway, hi everybody, my name is Friedrich. I used to be a developer in OpenSpending when I worked for OKF. Right now I've been working for the last 6 months or so on a fork that's kind of modernizing the old OpenSpending code base called SpendDB.
Okay.
So I'm very interested in the progress.
Yeah. Jana, hi.
Hi, my name is Jana Takis, and I'm working as a project manager for the Open Budgets. So I'm here mostly out of interest, just to be on top of things. Thank you.
Jindrich?
Hi, I'm Indrich Minaj. I will be also working on the OpenBudgets.eu project. I'm based at the University of Economics in Prague, Czech Republic. And to OpenSpending, I'm mostly an observer.
Okay. Judy?
Hi everyone. I'm affiliated with University of Bonn and Fraunhofer. I was coordinating the Open Budgets project, and I will be participating in it, maybe through both affiliations as well.
Okay. Rufus?
Just unmuting. Hi everybody, I'm Rufus Pollock. I'm president and founder of Open Knowledge. I'm actually joining you very early and on vacation, but I'm really happy to be here. I'm also unfortunately got a bit ill, so if I sound croaky, it's because I've got kind of something. I've got the lurgy. Good to meet everyone.
Okay. Soren?
I have to unmute myself. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm Sören. I'm on the one hand professor at the University of Bonn, on the other hand also leading a department at Fraunhofer, and we are actually with both parts members of the Open Budgets project, and of course interested in to see how we can collaborate with Open Knowledge Foundation, who is also part of the project actually with several chapters, how we can align these efforts. And I think this Tech Hangout is a good first step into that direction, and I hope to see many of you then next week for our kickoff on Monday, Tuesday, and then there will be quite intensive collaboration and afterwards, I guess. So I'm looking forward to that.
Great. Steve?
Hey everyone, I'm Steve Bennett. I'm in Melbourne, Australia. I'm kind of new to the sort of financial stuff, but I have a pretty big interest in standardizing data publishing, and I'm now working on a project called Open Economy for one of our politicians here who wants to win arguments with data.
Okay. And Tryggvi?
Hi, I am Tryggvi Björgvinsson, based in Iceland. I have been leading the open spending work for the past few years, taking over from Friedrich. I have now also stepped down to make it more accessible to others as we move into this revamp of open spending. So yeah, that would be me.
Okay. So, okay. Hi, everyone. I've just gotten some messages from other people that the Hangout's full and they can't join, so they'll have to watch later. Okay, so let's begin. First of all, the whole context is we're here to talk about the work that we're started and about to engage in for changes to the open spending platform. We're going to talk about how we see open spending and what it will become through these changes. To start with, Rufus is going to give a really brief history. You can actually follow along with the history with the presentation, which is linked to on the discussion thread, which I'll drop here again. And I might just screen share while Rufus is talking with a part of the presentation, unless you want to screen share, Rufus. Rufus, can't hear you. You're on mute.
Right, yeah, that would be great. I think you could do that.
Sure.
And I don't know which will come through on the broadcast, but that's great. Wonderful. Okay. Wow. Okay, there we go. We've got the tunnel, the magical tunnel. Okay.
Oh my gosh.
Infinite tunnel.
Stop that.
You need just to move back to the right window. Okay. Do you want me to try sharing?
Let me try again.
So this is going to be quite brief, both for my voice and to allow us much more time on other things. But I think it's really useful for people to have some context. As I said, if you're in the discuss thread, the deck is actually embedded and you can watch through with us. Also, I don't know when Paul has the screen share working. I might try screen sharing here. Let me try that. Maybe that will help.
I see. I think I've got it working now.
Okay, I will switch off. I will stop presentation. Okay, wonderful. Okay, so if people, the context here is just to give people a bit of context of where we've kind of come from and where we're going. So one is just what is open spending. So open spending overall as a project is a community-driven project whose aim is to create the world's largest and highest quality database of public finances, and all of that is open data. So just repeat, it's a community-driven project, it's about creating a database, and it's a database of public financial information, particularly government finances, but it could well include other public financial information and certainly some stuff around corporate information if as appropriate and as that linked in. And there's open data. So there's three things, you know. The focus is the database, and it's as open data, and it's community driven. Now, just to be clear, why do you want to do that? Government choices on where we spend money and taxation is, affect every one of us. Healthcare, education, culture, roads, you name it. Every day of our lives as citizens, we're affected by the choices that governments make about where they spend money and where they raise money from. But information on government finances is hard to get, hard to understand, hard to analyze. And for most people, it's also very dull. And the project aims to change that. This is something I'm not going to labor because many of us on this call share that, but that's a kind of key context. I'm also going to come back to why we're building the database rather than producing research papers in a moment. I'm also going to just give a little bit of context and history here, which is that this open spending represents around 6+ years of development. The first proposal for what became open spending was written actually in 2007 by Jonathan Gray and myself, and it's had at least 2 major iterations of the platform. Originally, it was kind of where does my money go? In 2009, 2011, it joined forces with other projects such as Often a Household. It expanded to become Open Spending. And today it has over 1,000 data sets, 28 million transactions. In fact, another 70 million that we'd like to load that we can't load for space constraints at the moment. And it grows at the rate of about a data set every 2 to 3 days. And those data sets, one of the things that's really happened is in the initial days, when we started, we had like 1 or 2 data sets, and they were all loaded by, someone. Basically, was the project was 2 or 3 people, and it was loaded by one of those people, myself or whoever was working on it then. And right now, those data sets are being added by the community, by people from the community, if you like, not Open Knowledge or some other organization that's funded even to work on the project. So it's really made that transition to kind of contribution. In addition, one of the big things I should explain is what we call where does my money go now sites. Where does my money go are like presentation sites, like actual where does my money go.org. That site is powered by OpenSpending behind the scenes, but it's a separate, distinct URL. It's a separate, distinct, simpler site. It's just about presenting the information. And there are over 30 of those now that we know of. Some of those have been built through work in collaboration with OpenSpending specifically, but a lot of them have just been built independently, powered by the API, but doing basically presenting citizen budgets or making information understandable. And there's also been a whole bunch of mainstream media use. And funding came from a variety of sources, including 4IP, which no longer exists, but Night News Challenge, we won the Night News Challenge in 2011, and some various other sources. Just a second piece of history then right now that gives you context for where we are today. Basically, since the ending of the Night News Challenge funding in around December 2013, activity has been slower, basically because there was very limited funding. We had some money, but it was very limited from various sources at Open Knowledge, and other partners had limited resources to contribute. But recently, that's picked up over the last 6 to 9 months. There's been various new things, and obviously, there's also this opportunity now, obviously, Open Budgets project, but also there's various other things that have happened. Like we did work over the last 2 years about developing a data standard that's really gaining momentum, which links into this, called with the Global Initiative on Financial Transparency, and which Trygve did a lot of work on and led on last year. So finally, also one of the things we did in 2013, 2014 was, as the project had grown, as I said now, a data set's added every 2 or 3 days. There are more organizations who've got involved. We've wanted to add a bit of a governance structure, not a very heavyweight one, but we kind of introduced a steering group. We had this concept of technical team, a content team, and again, that's really developed. One of the things that's always the case there is you need some paid coordination in our experience, and so the fact that particularly in late, early 2013, in 2014, for the last kind of not quite year, but from 3 months ago for about a year, we haven't had that coordination so much. Open Knowledge has got in the way of that a bit, but we've still had steering group meetings and various agreements with people, and people have contributed resources and time, and we also went through the budget. But also some issues with the platform became apparent, and this is crucial for today. Basically, these issues are not just technical, but a lot of them were they were technical things that got in the way of the growth of the platform. Particularly, it became clear that the user experience and sometimes the way of loading data was getting in the way of people contributing. I myself, in 2013 and 2014, ran about like 15 events, often evening events, where people would come and contribute, particularly in the UK. And while people would be able to load data, it was just clear there were a lot of sharp edges. And some of those things, we needed a new way forward for the platform. And you can read the appendix to this to read more about that. But what it resulted in was OSEP 1, which is this kind of OpenSpending enhancement proposals, which was started in kind of 2014, in fact, even discussed earlier, but accepted in February 2015. And this is the blueprint for the next generation of the platform. And that's what we're going to talk about. And so just to recap after that history again, what is OpenSpending? So that's the history. So just coming back now, and what we're going to talk about today, because it's not kind of OpenSpending as a whole as a project. So OpenSpending as a whole is databases at the core, which is there's a technology and a community that feed into that. It's like OpenStreetMap, you could think of. But in addition, we have the OpenSpending platform, and that's what we're going to talk about really today. And there's a key point just to focus on, to mention there, and this is slide 6. The technical focus of the OpenSpending project is the database. However, powering that database is the OpenSpending platform, and that's the set of the specifications and tools and other stuff for working and presenting financial information. The crucial point about that platform is a very large amount of that material intentionally is not tied to the OpenSpending database. There are specifications, there are visualizations, there are apps, there's other tooling that you can use, that anyone can use. And this has often been an intentional choice because, for example, some governments have been happy to publish into OpenSpending, but many might not, and they might want to just publish the data on their own site. And we might then want to pull that into OpenSpending, or they might want to do other stuff. But if we're providing them tooling, then we create a bigger ecosystem that people can contribute to, and so on, and that people can align with. You know, and that's been very successful. I mean, BubbleTree, for example, which is a visualization library, it's been used by the Department for International Development in the UK, you know, many other places. The specification that we're working on may now get adopted by dozens of countries in the next year or two, and has already been adopted by several. And finally, I don't know, Paul, just please tell me if you, when I get to the end of the section you'd like me to cover. Finally, therefore, I also want to talk a little bit, before I hand over, about the key philosophy of OpenSpending, because this is slide 7. So one thing also to step back is to say the only reason you have, you know, and this is a kind of crucial point, so it's kind of coming lastly to this, is the only reason you have data right is for it to be used. This, I hope, is very obvious. So in this diagram on slide 7, the thing that you really care about is the green box at the top. You know, what matters is ultimately someone using financial information. Now that might be a policymaker in the World Bank, it might be someone in the financial, or the financial department of a government. It might be a citizen who now understands where their money goes better and maybe votes differently or whatever. But that's what you care about. That's the use when someone uses it and they use it to create change. Now, the point I emphasize here is that OpenSpending, the kind of current philosophy of OpenSpending is that, and it's why we focus on the database, is that there's this whole layer in between. You know, some people will come to OpenSpending or its tools directly, but most of the time we don't think that will happen. We think that as it were, there will be intermediaries who will take OpenSpending data and financial data generally, and these could be journalists, they could be researchers, whoever, and they write news articles, or they write research papers, or whatever it is they do, or they run them, maybe it's the person who runs the town meeting on the participatory budgeting, but they communicate that information normally. They're the people in between, and that's important to get. It's important to get that OpenSpending doesn't always intend to be directly used. I can take even Where Does My Money Go? Where Does My Money Go is used by citizens, but Where Does My Money Go sites are often going to be built by intermediaries. OpenSpending is not going to go, OpenSpending the project is not necessarily going to go to every country or every town in the world and build them a Where Does My Money Go site. We hope that that Where Does My Money Go, that like really simple, you know, nice visualization site will be built by local people. And for example, that happened in Oakland, California. A group of activist citizens there took Where Does My Money Go, built Where Does My Money Go Oakland, and actually presented it at the local town meeting. They communicated with us, they used the database, but they presented it on their website with additional context for Oakland and so on. And this is crucial. So just to be clear, we really only care about the green box ultimately. But the thing that OpenSpending as a project, or the OpenSpending platform, focuses on is the blue stuff. And we emphasize that all, you know, and that you know, there's some kind of bullet points there explain that, which I won't go through, but like a key point there is there are vast numbers of ways to present, if you like, financial information, and our philosophy is to kind of to support that happening and do some of that sometimes, but not all of it. Mainly provide tooling and the data to do that. Two last points on that. One is that the data, the whole point about the tooling is governments, for example, can just use the tooling. They don't have to put their data into the OpenSpending database or other projects. They can go and reuse tooling and infrastructure without necessarily having to put all their data into this one major database. The last thing I'm going to mention just is the analogy with OpenStreetMap. OpenStreetMap's very similar. I assume that everyone on this call has heard of OpenStreetMap, I hope. But very few people, I think, in the world actually go to look at a map on OpenStreetMap.org. They mainly get the geodata that OpenStreetMap has collected, this amazing database, this open database, the world's largest of open geographic information, through, I don't know, Mapbox or Foursquare or CartoDB or you name it. They get that data through some other service or through a map that's embedded on the New York Times website or whatever it is. They don't go to OpenStreetMap.org directly. Okay, I'm at time, and that's really great, Paul. Saying that's the last one is the satellite analogy that I won't go through. You can just read. So, okay, back to you, Paul. Thank you.
We cannot hear you, Paul. You're muted.
Okay. Are we on now? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, Anna, you have a question?
Yeah. But please say if that is more something we should discuss at the kickoff next week. I was wondering, when Rufus pointed out, so the green box, that's the users, that's who we are doing it for. And I was wondering if you could kind of elaborate on the user stories that you've made around this and how this links back to the user stories that we're now working on in Open Budgets.
I can do so briefly. I mean, I think there's two ways you can go. So, I mean, there's a very, very large number of user stories at the really end user end of the spectrum, right? I mean, you can classify them, and there are common ones. Like, possibly, like, I want to know where which suppliers the government spends money on. I want to do an analysis of government expenditure because I want them to spend more money on collecting my rubbish or spend more on hospital beds or understand how much they spend on immigration. I mean, the set of really detailed questions is just kind of infinite. It's like, as I said, it could be education, it could be immigration, it could be it's just huge, 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 huge. You can cluster that into, like, how much do they spend on X, kind of thing. How much did they spend against what they planned to spend, blah, 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 blah. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, the question is on that is that I don't think as a project your job is to do, realistically can be, at least at OpenSpending end, to do that analysis for people. Your job is to support that kind of analysis by people, right? And I think in general, there are some fairly common things you can get out of that you need to do for people if they're going to support them in doing that kind of analysis and work. And it's kind of, I guess the analogy I would get out again is with OpenStreetMap. You sat down and said, well, what are all the uses of geodata? How are all the ways people are going to use maps and geographic information and data? And so many of them also unexpected. It's like, we're going to do a crowd map after the Nepal earthquake, and so on. So, I don't know. I mean, on that sense, some of them are really obvious, and we've written out for like 7 years, like, you can write, we wrote massive user stories 6-7 years ago when we first did Where Does My Money Go? We've done them again. But they're different from the user stories of, like, when you say user stories of your platform, user stories of platform, things like, I want to load data in and get a map and get a visualization at the end, or I want to be able to sort, aggregate my data and see who received, which supplier got the most money in this month or whatever. Those user stories are much more kind of granular at the level of the platform, and there's a huge distinction between them and the kind of high-level user stories like, I want to know what's spent on immigration. Yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks.
Okay, so I'm going to continue along a little bit further with the slides here before we just have more general discussion and questions. But does anyone else have any questions at this stage? Okay. Okay. So can everyone see my screen okay? Because it's a bit weird, this thing.
Not right yet. We could see your screen, but it's still the infinite.
How about now? Is it good?
Yes, it's good now.
Okay.
You may want to go into presentation mode, although I think that messes up stuff with Hangout, maybe.
I'll leave it like this for the moment. Okay. So, okay, so we've talked a little bit about the history and how we got to where we are now. There's a plan for new architecture to break OpenSpending out into a set of components or services that serve different needs and to kind of layer the offering. There's a lot of talk about a platform. So let's actually just have a bit of a look at what that actually means right now. And I'm going to try not dwell on slides too much, but I'm just going to step us through a few here. So right now, we've started a roadmap for development of the new platform, and we're focused on delivering a minimum viable product which validates some of the new architecture around storing data as flat files, and fixes and provides a really good user experience for loading data, which is one of the main pain points of the current OpenSpending. And it does provide some very basic level of visualization. But the scope of this minimal viable product is really just point one. This is what we need to do in order to establish the platform and then to build other types of components and services on top of it. This is our scope right now. So first of all, the steps that we're taking right now are migrating the current data to a flat file data store.
May I ask a question about that?
Yeah, of course.
What's the current data store you use?
It's in Postgres. It's in an SQL database now, the data.
Okay. And what do you mean by flat file storage? Like you store CSV files basically in the file system, or?
Yeah, I'll talk about it a little bit in a few minutes, but the basic idea is that we have a JSON file that describes metadata about the data in CSV files.
Mm-hmm.
So raw data is stored as CSV, and then we have a JSON file that provides additional information on what is in those CSV files.
Mm.
I hope it will become clearer as I step through the next few slides, and then we can ask some more questions, talk about that a bit more. So the thing we're starting on right now, the migration is underway, and Trygve started on that. We're working on a new data loading experience based on this flat file store and solving the user experience problems that are apparent on the current OpenSpending, and then a core set of visualizations. The data loading flow has we've done some mocks, so I'm going to just step through the process here. There's an initial landing page, which is quite straightforward. The first step is the user adding files, which we run a bunch of checks on to make sure that the files are valid. We then provide an interface for mapping to the logical model that OpenSpending will expect, so that we know how to extract an amount out of a budget line, information about what the budget line is, functional classification of data, and so forth. The user gets presented a description of what's happened before he publishes, so you can see what the mapping is, how the raw files map to the logical model. And on load, we immediately present some basic visualizations that are done that use data that's been aggregated on the flat file system as well. So we're providing a data load flow that is based on the raw data store using OpenSpending data package and CSV files. This is the first step to then offering additional services on top that may read from those raw files and provide additional types of ways to query data and so forth. This data load is one part of the architecture. This is a diagram that pretty much covers the planned architecture as it's understood now. Data load covers the acquisition, clean, and load, and the data store area, as well as some small amount of visualization, as you saw. There's other layers here, as you can see, like analytics and a query API. These are things that will be added, will be part of the OpenSpending platform, but we need to create the solid foundation of the flat file interface first. So that's why that's our focus right now. So the data store, just a little bit about it. It's the primary storage location for data. It's not intended for analytics directly. Data from the data store will be pulled into other systems, like a Postgres database or some other type of database to run queries out of. An advantage of that is that we will still provide some type of raw, low-level API, let's call it, that lets people consume data directly from the files if they want to do other types of processing, for example, Google BigQuery or other types of tools, to do processing that maybe we would never. Again, this is about this whole idea that people can take parts of the platform and use what's relevant to them. We don't expect we can support every possible use case to spend data. So at the most minimum level here, there's an API to get the data back out as flat files.
Let's give an example, Paul, very, very, very quickly there for people, which is very real. So there's a lot of data from the UK on transactional spending, you know, and it's on the order of, you know, millions of rows now. And an issue actually with the current platform is getting that raw dump is somewhat complex. And just to give an example, you know, you try and build a web application that allows people to do arbitrary queries on their data, but it's going to be quite painful, and you're going to have a lot of performance issues, you know, because to support doing a query on millions and millions of rows in slicing and dicing is kind of going to be difficult and costly. Whereas allowing people to pull that into like Amazon Redshift or Google BigQuery as they want, or any other tool they have, you know, a triples, you know, you really want to allow people to do that fine-grained analysis. And for example, I did that a few years ago of like pulling it into a local or online Postgres database and then doing slicing and dicing. Now, obviously, you want to allow people to do some stuff in your platform. I'm just emphasizing that on large data sets, other stuff, you're really going to want to let people get data out and into their analytical system, because that's what's going to allow them to get the performance that they need. That's it for me. Thanks, Paul.
Okay. So to the question earlier, so data will be stored in flat files with a JSON file that describes the metadata of the file. This is an example of the current state of that descriptor file. We're in draft at the moment with the OpenSpending data package. We'll probably be iterating on it quite a lot as we migrate data and start to build out the platform. There's some links here that you can, if you look at the slides, you can actually get links to a more detailed selection of examples of how the data package looks, and it describes there some use cases for supporting different types of data, like data that that's normalized across multiple files, or denormalized where all of the data for a budget data set is in one file, and so forth. So if you're interested in that, please do go through and look at those examples. Now, about the data load, which is a pretty painful point right now in OpenSpending. There's a bunch of compromises here with user experience and quality of data and so forth. We're opting for a scenario where we have low flexibility in the raw data quality. That means that we expect the files themselves to be fairly well formed. Something that actually holds numbers, for example, should basically have numbers in the data. There shouldn't be empty rows and things like that. But then a higher flexibility in the raw structure so that we can map to it. Like, there's no requirement that the user would have column names already done in advance. There'll be a very flexible mapping system, but we do require that the raw data itself that goes into the system would already be of a reasonably good quality. Last point I'll talk about then, again, around this whole idea of platform, is that there are many ways to access data. This is, as Rufus was talking on a bit now. So at the most minimal level, there will be a raw way to get data, get the CSV data back out of the system. Okay. Also with the JSON files that describe the data, so provide mapping and metadata on the data. On top of that, we do want to provide like a proper API similar to the current OpenSpending API, where someone can do queries on aggregates and so forth. That is not currently part of our initial roadmap because we're more focused on getting data into the system and providing that basic interface over raw files. But that will be kind of next up on the agenda. And then also another API would be search index style free queries over metadata, and a way to discover data that's in the whole OpenSpending system via search. That's pretty much the current scope of the roadmap and where we're going with it. I'll just move a little bit on to, yeah, sorry, someone has a question?
So I had one thing. Sorry, if you just go back to your screen share,
yeah,
I have
sure.
one thing very quickly just to add to people on your last slide, which is great on the API. So just to explain to people, one point is that we, in that minimal viable product, just to recap, it's like someone has a CSV and they get a visualization at the end, and like the minimum route we can do to give them that, because that is a large amount of the initial use cases people have. Like, I'm a journalist, I want to do I want to visualize something. Le Monde have done it, other people have done it. Or I'm a citizen, I just want to embed something in my blog post. The key point is that actually you can compute as flat files the aggregates you need to power those visualizations. So like most visualizations, right, what they are is like total spending by, you have a tree map and it's spending by department, or spending by supplier, how much is spent with IBM. That is what's called, a single level. We could call a single level aggregate. You're aggregating, you're grouping by, you're summing over all spending, and then just clustering by department. And the logic here is actually something like S3 plus cores. You can turn on cores in S3. If you dump those aggregates to S3, you literally can power your visualization straight off of S3 files very powerfully. Now, we may run through an API, we may not, but it's just a point that actually the raw API off disk actually is an incredibly scalable and reliable way to often do that. And I mention reliable and scalable because we literally have had those problems. If you're running off your API and you've got Le Monde, runs a story with your visualization, that's a lot of hits in a very, very short period of time. And so it's, just to emphasize, the raw API at this moment, even if we're saying that's only what we may provide, like iteration 1 in the next couple of months, it will actually cover like 80 to 90% possibly of the initial use cases if we do it right. Okay.
But the raw API will basically allow you to query just a single data set, right? And it will not be possible to query across data sets. That's what you need then this OLAP style rich queries for, right? Or
well, it's even more complicated than that, Soren, because often the OLAP style queries, to be honest, are the way OpenSpending goes. We didn't go into this right now. Is it kind of has what I call a partitioned OLAP model. Each data set is its own OLAP world. We don't do consolidate conformance across. We can come to this, but if you want, we don't do conformance across data sets at the moment. And one of the really
but this
big
is
things we
actually
always wanted to do, it's really great for open budgets because that's what you want to do in open budgets. So there's a huge alignment of that kind of stuff. Totally.
Yeah. Okay.
It's just hard.
And but you said there is some mapping to some data model. I don't know what slide this was.
Here.
Because this data packaging, because that's actually one work package, and maybe Jindrich can tell us a bit more in open budgets to create such a data model which allows to integrate data from different sources and then to run these kind of queries across data sets. Now the question would be, how can we bring this together, that we have or Jindrich, you already worked on this data model, right? And is it how aligned is that maybe with what is here done for OpenSpending?
So we already had a call with Rufus and others regarding the discussion of the differences or the overlaps in between the OpenSpending upcoming data model and the model that we plan to use in open budgets. I've summed it up in some meeting notes. I'm not sure, maybe I can just paste the link there. But from my perspective, I think the principal difference of our approaches, like my approach or our approach in open budgets and Rufus's approach, is that while I think it's we can have open spending data model, OSDP, on the import and export, Rufus would like us to have this on as the internal primary way we store the data. And I think if you look at the plan for openbudgets.eu, it's quite clear that there is a mismatch between the data model that we plan to use and the one that's in OpenSpending, or at least in its roadmap, because openbudgets.eu will be based on RDF, and OpenSpending is this JSON files and CSV. So there's certainly a certain mismatch.
But I think we can bridge between the two. Like JSON, there is a JSON LD, for example. Rufus, you're also a chair of the CSV on the web working group, right? Maybe we could try to bridge between those two things to bring this together. I think this could be actually a very interesting showcase. I think there are more of these use cases where you have lightweight formats like CSV and JSON, but I think in order to have these analytical functions in the end, you need an integrated data model and you need this semantic description of the data. And maybe, yes, and that would be my hope, that we can try to bring this actually here together. That on the one hand we keep this simple formalisms, data representation formalisms, but on the other hand we have a smooth path for adding annotations and increasing the semantic representation, so that in the end it facilitates also such analytical things later on. And of course there must be a mismatch, because I think the open spending roadmap is maybe a roadmap for this minimum viable product for the next month, while in open budgets we have a bit longer horizon for 3 years, right? And
correct.
So
yeah,
I think what we should try to do is really maybe how can we find a good alignment between the two and make things fit together. And
yeah. Sure, I completely agree, and I think it will be great if we manage to actually use some simpler data formats on the back end while keeping the advantages of RDF. So I'll be happy to be persuaded that it will actually work as well for openbudgets.eu. But I just wanted to voice some concerns, like this mismatch is not only in the intended data formats or models, but also in the intended use cases. So what I see so far is that the data storage that is planned for OpenSpending will not give us so much leverage that we want to have for the analytical tasks. And obviously, as you also mentioned, Søren, we will need to do queries across data sets.
Yeah, but as I understood, Rufus, no one prevents us from putting a triple store on the side and loading all the data we want into a big triple store, right? Or a graph database or whatever we need, right? So
exactly. And just to say something, this is our minimum viable product. The whole aim of OpenSpending has always been, for example, cross-querying and analytics across datasets. I'm just warning that it's not easy, like, because that was a goal in like iteration 1 in 2009-10, and we did some of that. I won't go into what now on the call. I want to go into like the complexity of that we should address. But Søren, the key point there is what you just said, and I think Jindrich, you were saying, and maybe I just actually allude here to slide. If people are in the larger deck on the Discuss forum, I think it's slide 31 about data warehouses. This is a standard diagram from Kimball and Ross, second edition, which is the standard text on data warehouses. My point would be, basically, you guys are really focused, and ultimately we are as well, on like what would be called data presentation area and data access tools, the data mart. You're building a data mart, basically. And my argument at the moment is to say, hey, the data store, your data staging area for you guys could be shared with us. Like the area where you get a lot of data from, that doesn't mean that you're gonna pull it into a triple store and do all kinds of analytics and connecting, but the data for you guys, if you like, for us, what we're calling the data store, and it's called data store in this diagram, is like the data staging area for you guys. And that would be the place of real overlap. And as Søren was alluding to that, and that you can pull that data into a triple store and then do that, a lot of that connecting. And that's where we can have, like, that's the whole logic here, is that people are going to have a lot of. Some people want to use Amazon Redshift. Some people want to use Triple Store. Some people want to use something else. And by having a shared, if we can have like some shared simple stuff at the data store level, that can then be pulled into whatever data mart, analytical tool engine, or whatever people are working with. And that would be the kind of the metaphor also here that I think really builds on what Soren was just saying, which is slide 31 in the deck, I think, from in the discuss forum.
Well, I think from my perspective, this is very well for read access if you just want to load the data. But in case of OpenBudgets.eu, and I think in other applications as well, you would also need to have write access. So it might be a little bit more challenging to actually serialize everything to the OSDP, everything that the application requires. So let's keep that in mind.
Maybe we could talk about that when we all meet in Bonn anyway.
Yeah, yeah. But what write access do we need, Jindrich? I think basically it's contributing data from the community. There might not be so many requirements to write to the data.
About the use case of participatory budgeting.
But this could be simply creation of a new data set, right? Which represents a variant of an existing budget. So you don't want to overwrite the existing budget, but you basically copy it and then you create a revision of it. I think this could be still easily accommodated also with this architecture.
Yeah, let's try to find out.
Yeah.
I think let's move on from that, and maybe we can pick that up in Bonn around Open Budget specifically. I saw back here, Friedrich, that you had a question, so I wanted to. I'm not sure I understood it from what's written here in the chat. Do you want to ask again, or?
I think I essentially meant the same thing that Rufus was also referring to, which is that to some extent, I think the question of how we match up different budgets from different countries is going to be based on the question of how you model the data, but it's not the same question, right? You can first think about the data model, and then you can think about alignment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And just to say, Friedrich, so on that question, and this is an important one, maybe just to explain that, you could enforce in your data model that people must have their data in a certain way that makes it easier then to map between data sets. Like so a huge decision you make in this area, right, is you can force everyone who gives you data to align with some kind of conceptual model of the world that you have. Like, just to be stupid, like everyone must use a particular taxonomy. They must classify their budget data using COFOG, which is a well-known budgetary taxonomy. And that will then make it a lot easier to make comparisons between budgets, between different countries' budgets. But it does impose a large burden on users to get it into that form. I mean, it can be multiple-year efforts to reclassify a budget in that way. Literally, I've spoken with the World Bank and stuff. So the way that OpenSpending goes at the moment is it does not require that. And so there are these two levels of mappings. We're very open in what we allow in terms of the kind of logical model. We map to a kind of common logical model, but the common logical model just says you have a taxonomy. It doesn't say it has to be COFOG. And that then does put work on that second level of trying to align, or over time align different entities' budgets. And that we want to be able to do both, let's be clear, but it's just like we've taken a route where we're more generous to people to get data into the system.
I think the discussion that Paul and I were having on the mailing list a while back was that it would be really nice to kind of turn that into a social process, where rather than having it done by some weird government ministry somewhere who doesn't really know what COFOG is, we turn it into something that's very visible, and then basically it becomes a thing that, but basically if people disagree about how to align two budgets, there's actually a political fight to have, and having political fights on the internet always is fun.
That sounds like a great idea. So let's just move on a little bit, unless anyone... Can we just move on a little? Because I'm a bit aware of time. I don't want to get anyone stuck. So I'm just going to move on a little bit to what we've been doing in the recent weeks, particularly. To start with our first screen. First of all, we've redone the community site. This is a tech course, so I won't really talk much about that, but we're starting to invest some more time back into the community sites. to prepare for the changes that are about to occur in OpenSpending. For anyone on the call who's interested in helping contribute technically could mean code, but it could also mean use cases or just general discussion around implementation. We have a subsection of the community site called Next. This has a roadmap, the roadmap for the MVP we talked about earlier. It also links to a work board, which shows what we're doing at this moment in time, what's scheduled, what's in the backlog, what's done, what's being done. And it provides some extra context there. Information on the OpenSpending enhancement proposals, there's a section for presentations and so on. So anyone's invited to dive in there, obviously. If anyone's particularly interested in working on OpenSpending in any form, then they should get in touch with us. There's plenty to do now around the core stream of work and as part of the core stream of work. That pretty much covers what I wanted to talk about in a more prescriptive manner. So I think we can, first of all, are there any more questions at this stage? Otherwise, I'd like to open up to maybe ask Steve if he wants to tell a little bit about his work in open economy, and we can just hear from some other budget projects and how they may or may not tie into OpenSpending. Okay, so I'm going to pass over to you, Steve, just for a short period.
Cool. Okay, did my screen sharing work? No one said no? Okay.
It's black at the moment. Yes, it does work, yes.
Okay.
It works.
So, great. So basically, I've been in touch with a Greens senator here called Scott Ludlam, who has a bit of a passion for having data-driven arguments about budgets, and in particular comparisons between sort of federal departments, but also private organizations. So comparing, BHP and how much they spend on mining versus however much the government would need to provide housing for all homeless Australians. And he's got this site called Open Economy, which is what I'm showing here. And the way it kind of works is it's around this 4-quadrant model. So we're not just talking about spending specifically, but if I can make it a little bit bigger, there are assets, liabilities, expenses, and revenue. So assets, obviously, how much you've kind of got in the bank, and liabilities is your debts, and expenses and revenue is how much that changes each year. And then you can currently kind of drill into these things. So for the Commonwealth budget, it sort of explodes out into all the different little bits, and then there's the defence portfolio, which is 40 billion, and that explodes out to 30 billion, and so on. And eventually we can see that the army costs 5 billion a year, and we can load alongside that BHP Billiton's budget, and wherever that is over here, the idea is that you can, I don't know, see how much they spend on whatever and forming comparison. Anyway, the point about this site is it was basically built as a silo like 4 years ago. He's now got a little bit of money to redevelop it and make it look better and much easier to use and more compelling. And what I'm hoping to do is jig the whole kind of data side of it, so that instead of being this little silo off by itself with a really weird format of Excel spreadsheets that powers it, I'm kind of hoping that OpenSpending can be the whole back end. But the thing I don't know yet really is whether OpenSpending is flexible enough to support this 4-quadrant model, whether OpenSpending is just spending, or can it also be revenue and assets and liabilities. And if it can, then I think this could be really good for us and you, because basically I'm sort of teamed up with a visualization person who does really, really good visualizations. So we're going to kind of rejig this to make it look really nice. And the way I think this would work is that her visualization bit would become like a plugin into OpenSpending, which means that you could visualize any other OpenSpending data with her beautiful front end. And our data would obviously go into OpenSpending. So Scott's arguments about comparing this budget with that budget, now he would have access to the whole, how many million rows was it? 70 million rows. So now we could compare the German budget with BHP or whatever. So actually, I don't think I really need to make this argument to you guys. Yeah, so that's basically what it is. And I would love to hear whether anyone else has been working on anything vaguely comparable with assets and liabilities, or whether it is just spending. Rufus has been typing. But anyway, I think I'm done, so I'm ready to, you can just speak your response.
You've started, like this is what you're showing now, like I know because I've seen in the past, this is the current platform, but and you're starting to work on it now, like with new data, or what's the idea is just to create a new visualization layer, that's the main goal, or is it?
So the idea, I think we're basically just treating the current platform as if that was a prototype. Mm-hmm. So I don't think we're going to use any of that code. I think we're just going to use that as a kind of, we want the new visualization to have some features that are comparable to what's been built there.
Sure.
But I'm hoping, maybe I don't quite understand the scale of what we're doing yet, but I'm really hoping that we can just redo this whole concept as get the data that he had in Open Economy, put that data into OpenSpending instead, and build a visualization front end onto that.
I see. So it's basically a rewrite. You're going to redo the whole thing, basically. So I think that just to work out how we can collaborate on like data package and store it as part of OpenSpending, let's maybe share some of the raw data, and then we can just start to have a look at it, and I can work with you and help you work out how we're going to get this onto data package, and how we can see that what we're working on now as part of the roadmap also aligns with your goals for your next period of development. I think that'd be really great. I'm really excited about that project, and it's been around for a few years now in Australia, so I'm really happy to see that there'll be a budget project in Australia that has a nice focus on visualization.
Guys, unfortunately, I have to go now. We have a faculty meeting. But I think I got the impression that we can make this really, really fit and align open budgets very well with OpenSpending, and that would be my suggestion, that we intensify this discussion also on Monday, how we actually can implement and achieve that. But thank you very much, Rufus, for taking the lead and organizing, bringing us all together, and look very much forward to meet you all in Bonn then next week, and to continue the discussion, and then of course starting really the development and getting our hands dirty and driving things forward. Sorry that I have to leave early, but
it's perfect, Soren. Thank you so much, and look forward to seeing you in Bonn next week. And thank you. It's actually perfectly on the hour. So
I hope you get better, Rufus. Yeah.
I hope so too.
Okay. Bye bye.
Thanks for coming. Great. Bye. Okay. Dates for the roadmap. I think that originally when we did, sorry, I'm answering Steve asked a question here in the chat about dates for the roadmap. So originally when I wrote up this version of the roadmap, I left it very loose, like from now to the end of the year. In reality, it's probably more like 2 to 3 months worth of work. It just depends on yeah. My guess now would be 2 to 3 months worth of work for the roadmap as we've discussed it until now. How does that fit in with what you're doing, Steve?
Not sure exactly.
Okay.
I think we could wait if we needed to.
But just to be clear, Steve, some of the parts of the back end, so if you don't need the viz, some of the viz front end will be in the next month, will be shipped in the next few weeks. Like, we are doing work on it this week, like right now, to trial some of the back end stuff. So like in terms of the data load experience, I think by the end of July, we're going to have operational stuff there. I'm always cautious. Paul and I are trying to be really realistic on software projects because you know what software projects are like, right?
Yeah.
Estimates always double. So that 2 to 3 months is genuinely already with that estimate double. Like that's not us going, we think we can spike it. We have been doing work. So just for example, we actually did early this year a complete command line data modeling and load experience already has been done. We've already spiked an entire load into the data store earlier this year, so we've already done work, and this is now, if you don't need the viz, depending on the viz, you're plugging in your own visualization, they'll be like, you'll get in earlier on that roadmap.
Yeah. So let's just have a chat, Steve, with your data.
Let's, maybe even this weekend. Because basically what I need to do is I need to understand it all well enough to be able to plot out what the architecture looks like for my end and see how that fits in.
Yeah. I think at a basic level, because you've already been engaging with data package on the other work like mapping and so forth, then you've already got a bit of a head start in grokking what's going on there. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've also got, it's also fun trying, it's really fun working directly with a politician. I mean, he's a very cool guy, but he's still just trying to, the classic stuff of trying to explain to a user that what they're telling you is design and what they need to tell you is requirements, and Yeah.
Okay, great. So I'm aware we're a bit over time. Anyone? Let's just I've got time, but I just want to make sure, because we're on time, if anyone needs to go, that's fine. But does anyone have anything they want to ask or bring up or talk about their own work or anything like that?
I do have another totally unrelated question.
Mm-hmm.
Has there been any discussion about what happens when there are two different sources of the same data? Like, say it's a third party that doesn't release their own budget, and two different individuals, for example, claim to have the lowdown on their budget, but they disagree somehow. How does that get resolved?
So there's a few, I mean, Trigby maybe has something to say about that as well. There's a few different possible approaches for stuff like that. At the most basic level, at this stage, all data that goes into the system belongs to a user. So this data set belongs to that user, that one. But there's been discussion in the past, and there's a goal to get to where there's like a core data set that maybe will become the official version of the data.
Right.
But this is not really in our current.
But until then, it's just Paul's North Korean budget and Steve's North Korean budget.
Yeah,
exactly. There can be two competing trees of the world there. Just one thing to Paul. I know Ido was trying to get into the original call.
That's right, but he just pinged me. Yeah, he pinged me and he has to go now. So
okay.
He can't come in now. It's a real pity because I had a colleague of mine who works with open data quite extensively in Israel who was going to contribute here, but he had a limit of till now, basically, so he can't come on.
Okay, next time we'll do another one of these. Okay.
Sure. Okay. Anyone else, or should we call it a day for today?
I think it's a good point to wrap on time right now, but so or close to being on time, and we can run another. If people are interested, we can definitely run another of these in like a month. I think we'll start having them a bit regularly, like once a month. But this, Paul, I think over to you as chair.
Yeah. Okay. So we're gonna close off now. I think it would be great to do this once a month, and particularly to hear what other people are doing, not just about. I mean, to give updates on where we are with OpenSpending, but like examples like Steve's work now. To me, that is really a critical part of the change of OpenSpending as a platform, is to be able to provide a backbone for projects like that, where obviously we can't solve your visualization problem, but we can solve the whole stack that lets you create your visualization, and that's actually a really key part of the point. So, okay, that's a good point to end on, I think. So let's talk next time. And for everyone who's going to Bonn, we'll meet in a couple of days.
Yeah. Great.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
Thanks. See you in
Thank
Bonn.
you.
See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, thanks everyone, bye.
Bye.